What is going on, everybody? Josh Kirby back with you, the Kirby on Sports podcast. We have another interview for you today, but before we hop in, a big thanks to all of our sponsors, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate, the Transformative Alignment Group, Barrett, Pest, and Termite Services, Mark Lynch with Guild Mortgage, and the official energy drink of the Kirby on Sports podcast, Don't Sleep Energy. Use promo code KOS Podcast for 12% off your order every single time. Now to welcome on our guest. I met him over at training camp, able to give us a little bit of his time today from the Washington Post, covering the Washington Commanders, Sam Fortier. What's up, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. And since this is a backwards hat podcast, I'll turn that thing around.
It just depends on the day. If I'm wearing it forward, backwards, it's no specific preference, but let's go. But Sam, thanks for coming on. Obviously, it's pretty busy getting into the draft in a little more than a week away. We'll get to that shortly, but what I like to do with all of my guests, just take me through how you got into the business and how you landed with the Washington Post.
Wow. I will give you the extremely condensed version, which is I grew up in rural New Hampshire. We did not have a student newspaper my senior year of high school. I started one. I wanted to go to a good journalism school, went to Syracuse, and just started writing a bunch of stories, just started putting about a bunch out on Twitter, freelance for a bunch of different places, The Ringer, the New York Times, a couple other places, and just became an intern at the Post after my senior year and left for a little bit to cover the Chargers for the Athletic and came back. So that's how I got there.
It seems like Syracuse is just known for how many great journalists and broadcasters come out of that school. It just seems like such a great school to go to for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of alums, a lot certainly in the broadcast space, a ton in the writing space as well in the NFL. Greg Bishop, Eli Saslow, Adam Kilgore, my colleague. Just a lot of really great writers, and I would say even more than the school, I started the student newspaper, the Daily Orange, and I think that being in school is great, and you can learn a lot of things in the classroom, but unless you're applying those things by doing it, kind of like you're doing on this podcast, or people are doing when they're writing articles and reporting. There's no better teacher. And so I would say the Daily Orange was really formative in my time there.
So now getting into it, Commanders, obviously you cover the Commanders for the Washington Post, and I got the opportunity to meet you at training camp. And I must say, from the year before this past training camp to this training camp, there was a big difference.
Huge difference. I mean, ownership change. I think it got approved a couple of days before training camp. People were really excited going out to FedEx Field. It was a big deal. And so I think what you've seen over the last year, the team obviously on the field was terrible, but they cleaned house. And so I think this draft really gives you the start of the Josh Harris era, because it's not just the people they inherited. This is a hand-picked GM with their, hand-picked advisory group. Dan Quinn, the coaching staff, they've started to build it through free agency. So these players are going to be the cornerstones of the Peters-Quinn era, however long that lasts and however successful or unsuccessful it is. So I would say, this is a massive, massive process for Adam Peters.
Yeah, because you look at training camp and I'm not sure if you got the same vibe that I did. That seems like something good's happening. Although the season did not go as the Commanders wanted. And at the end of the year, obviously, Ron Rivera getting let go, Jack Del Rio getting let go after the Dallas Cowboys loss. But it just seemed like that positive energy carrying into training camp sort of subsided with the season, but is kicking back off with the great free agency that the Commanders have had so far, with the amount of cap space they were able to use so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that people do know, right? Like the players, kind of the shift in personnel that they have there. But I think that even the things that people don't really notice, like They just hired Dave Gardy from the league office as an in management game consultant. They just hired Kirtan Mehta as the VP of Public Affairs. He's going to be huge in the stadium search. They moved their business offices from FedEx Field to a business office space in College Park. I think there's a lot of things about this franchise that are becoming professionalized, competent, and really, I think on par with what you would expect from a multi-billion-dollar business in your backyard. I think that there's a lot of things that are being upgraded here beyond just the football team.
So, just briefly, Sam, just very condensed like before, just your overall thoughts on the Commander season, because with the short amount of wins they've had, still a lot of good coming out of that season, I would say. A lot of good players and stuff.
I would say it was an uncomfortable purgatory, right? Because even though everyone knew it wasn't going anywhere, and Sam Howell faded halfway through the year and obviously got shipped out, it was necessary because they had committed to Ron. They told him, obviously that he would be the coach. And even though they had their eye on the future, trading Montez Sweat and Chase Young. So I would say uncomfortable purgatory is the summary I would put.
Absolutely. So now, fast forward to now, in the draft's about a little over a week away, next Thursday. Obviously the rumor mill has started. I choose not to be a part of that rumor mill. I just choose to turn on the draft, and whoever the Commanders pick, roll with it. So there's a lot of reports of Drake May from UNC, Jaden Daniels. Obviously, the Commanders need a quarterback, but the free agency market was really big in terms of upgrading the offensive line. But in your mind, Sam, do you think with a quarterback they can get some more offensive line help as well through the draft? Because there's some pretty good prospects from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I'm going to break this down in two different ways. First, I'm going to talk about the quarterback. I'm going to say that I don't know who they're going to take. I do think it is significant when Adam Schefter says buy your Jaden Daniels jersey. I don't read into the betting market, particularly with the NFL draft, because I don't think the betting market knows. But I would say it's significant. And yeah, that's the rumor. I was at the pro days for Jaden Daniels and Drake May in Baton Rouge and Chapel Hill, and a bunch of people came up to me and were talking about, oh, Jaden Daniels definitely going to the Commanders. But it was hard for me to parse. Are they repeating a rumor, or are they making astute observations? To shift to the offensive line question, yeah, I do think there are a lot of really good prospects. And considering how many quarterbacks and receivers and edge rushers you're going to get in the first round, how far do some of those guys fall? And are you packaging, your 2 second-round picks to go up into the first and get one of those guys or not? I mean, I asked Adam Peters in Orlando at the owners' meetings. I said, you have a hole at left tackle. Do you plan to address that in free agency or the draft? And he kind of pushed back on me and said, we don't have a hole. We think that Cornelius and Trent Scott are both good players. And while I believe him that they think, those guys are decent players, I would be extremely surprised if those guys were the left tackle on day one. So I would expect them to be aggressive in pursuing a left tackle. But what does that look like? I'm not sure.
So with free agency, obviously the Commanders filled a lot of holes, it seems like. I'm not sure if you agree here, but I think free agency, they have a lot of building blocks, and the draft, they can go in and fill even more pieces to make this team hopefully start maybe the rebuild or on the trend to becoming a winning franchise for many years to come. I say that, but it might not happen. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think that free agency was Adam Peters building a bridge away from Ron Rivera's roster, right? You saw very few players come back. You saw a lot of short-term, flexible, cheap contracts. They were not making big splashes with a new GM in the way that the Raiders were, or the way that the Panthers were. It was really, the longest, most expensive contract I want to say was 3 years and a max of 45 for Dorrance Armstrong. And so to me, this is Adam Peters saying, hey, these guys are going to come in, but we don't know how long they're going to be here. And really, we want to build it through the draft. The foundation is going to come through the draft, and obviously, they have a bunch of picks, and they're going to be in a good position for that. But to me, those guys in free agency, I wouldn't spend a ton of time getting to know their names because they might not be here in a year or two.
Absolutely. So, after the draft, obviously teams are gearing up for OTAs, voluntary workouts, so on and so forth. I'm sure you'll be out there covering that. Just look, have they started voluntaries yet, or do you know the timeline on that?
So because they had a new head coach, they could start their offseason program on April 1st or 2nd. And that's what they did. And so Dan Quinn has said that basically what he's doing right now, he's splitting his days. In the morning, he'll be with the guys when they're in, and in the afternoon, he'll be doing draft prep. So they are, getting some install. Right now they're mostly just working out, getting back in phase one, and that'll ramp up, and then they'll have rookie mini camp, 2 weeks after the draft, and then they will have their off season on the field portion. They'll have, I want to say, 4 weeks of workouts, and that'll be voluntary until mandatory mini camp, which is in like mid-June.
Oh man, it's just all coming in the air. It just all starts to boil the excitement after the NFL draft, which is about a week away, and then all over again. I'm hoping. Do you know anything about training camp this year? If it's going to be in Ashburn again, or do you think they might move it like they did before?
It's too early to tell. I think they might do joint practices as well. I think those things are all on the table, but I don't know if they've been finalized yet.
Absolutely. But wrapping things up here, obviously, Sam, we appreciate your time again covering the Commanders for the Washington Post. Just to tell our listeners where they can find you and your incredible work.
Thank you. You can find me on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, SAM the number 4TR, SAM the number 4TR, or you can go to the Washington Post, WashingtonPost.com. I'm in the sports section. You can pick up the physical newspaper if you want as well.
Oh, I do. I pick up that newspaper. Sometimes that's sports. Just the layout of the sports page, especially, and I'm looking at it right now. I framed the Nationals championship paper and the Stanley Cup one. I framed it, have it up there. The way they lay it out is just incredible.
I love it. Shout out to print. Shout out to Brianna, one of our designers. She does a great job. I really appreciate you picking up the paper.
Yeah, because it's like just the graphics and the pictures in the sports section. It makes it like, oh, I gotta pick this up. Or if I see something on X about, oh, this special commemorative edition, I'm like, I need to go somewhere and try to find this. And that's what makes the Post sports section at least so great, because I think it sort of draws the readers in to read more, which I love.
Man, I hope the words can also pull you in, and that we can meet our designers who do a great job. I appreciate you shouting them out right now.
Absolutely. But for our sponsors, once more, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Transformative Alignment Group, Barrett, Pest, and Termite Services, Mark Lynch with Guild Mortgage, and the official energy drink of the Kirby on Sports podcast, Don't Sleep Energy. Once again, Sam Fortier. I plan to be at training camp. I hope to see you there, my friend.
Yes, sir. I look forward to it.
I appreciate it, and hopefully we can catch up again really soon.
Yes, sir.